been a revision. That's why. Welcome, everybody. Good evening. Today is Tuesday, June 4th, 2024, and the time is 6 p.m. At this time, I'm going to call the meeting to order. The regular meeting of the following will come to order. The Victorville City Council and the same council sitting as the Victorville Library Board of Trustees, the Southern California and Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency, the city as a housing asset successor, the Joint Power Finance Authority, and the Victorville Water District. Madam Clerk, would you kindly call the roll?
Councilmember Gomez.
Present.
Councilmember Irving.
Here.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
Here.
Mayor Becerra.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you very much. At this time, our invocation is going to be led by Elder Donna Williams. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And our pledge will be led by our Captain Randy German. If you would please stand.
Evening, thank you. Give an honor to every dignitary in this room this evening. Let us go ahead and pray. Father God, in the name of Jesus, as a collective body of leadership in this community, we are asking for your blessings in this city council meeting on today. I thank you for every person that sits in the seat as a city councilman. I pray that their hearts are committed to the betterment of our communities in this great city. Thank you in advance for showing them the way to navigate what will be accomplished on the agenda for this evening. Lord, we are asking that you continue to build strong and wise city councilmen and women to carry out the day-to-day board missions, commissions, and committees, which will breed many opportunities in the infrastructure of this city, of this great city. And we thank you, Lord. Because of the unity of great leadership in the city council, we look to accomplish the expansion and growth to Victorville's businesses, the housing, and any other areas, Father God, for substantial revenue to our city, which follows to be every government code. We thank and praise you, Father God, for everything that will go on this evening, and we give you all the glory, the honor, and the praise in Jesus' name. Amen, amen, and amen.
Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, will you present the agenda and any revisions there too?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have revisions to agenda item number 3 this evening. Revision number 1, revising the table under the section entitled Changes since May 14th, 2024 Budget Workshop. The original table showed a decrease in operating costs in the amount of $298,254 and a decrease in personnel in the amount of $68,575. The corrected table shown below on the revision shows a decrease in operating costs in the amount of $435,764, an increase in personnel in the amount of $68,935. Revision number 2 is to CIP project 74545, originally entitled Replace Well 203, has been corrected to replace roof at Well 203. The project description was updated to reflect the correction from the district's needs to replace well number 203 to the district needs to replace the roof at well 203. Revision number 3 is to CIP project 74514 entitled Fire Hydrant Installations. The project justification was updated from part of your development impact fees for water goes towards the installation of fire hydrants in various locations, where it has been determined they are needed to various locations throughout the city have been identified as needing fire hydrants in underdeveloped areas. This project aligns with the city's strategic goal E, investing in infrastructure, and strategic goal B, public safety. The additional fire hydrants will assist our fire response by requiring less distance for pulling hose and more fire flow availability. Revision number 4 is to CIP Project 74506 entitled Block Wall and Electric Gate at La Mesa Treatment Plant. The project description was updated to reflect the correct location from Elevado Treatment Plant to La Mesa Treatment Plant. That concludes the revisions this evening, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to ask our council, are there any conflicts of interest declarations?
No.
None? Okay. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Victorville City Council. Your city council is interested in your ideas and opinions and furthermore endeavors to incorporate them into its deliberations. At the same time, the council must be able to carry out its business in an organized and efficient manner, free from material disruption. Therefore, this meeting will be administered in accordance with the council's established policies and procedures and Government Code Sections 54957.9 and 54957.95. Individuals may speak on agenda items or on issues not posted on the agenda during the public comment section, provided those issues are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. Individual speakers may address the council once per public comment period and once per each public hearing item for up to 3 minutes. Additional time may be allotted for appeal hearings in accordance with the city's adopted policy and procedure manual. Those who desire to comment on a public hearing item may wish to reserve their remarks until that particular public hearing has been opened. All testimony is to be directed solely to the council. Although open meeting laws do not permit council members to engage in dialogue with any speaker during the public comment periods, please know your comments and questions may be taken into consideration by the council members when discussing the particular agenda item. The presiding officer may briefly respond or have staff respond to statements or questions, or may request that the staff report back to the council at a subsequent meeting. Speakers are requested to comment as briefly as the subject permits. Once comments are invited, the speaker will be called on by name, then recognized by the presiding officer. The speaker will state the item number that will be addressed or that the subject is a non-agendized matter. Audience members may not disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of this meeting, and those who do are subject to removal from the meeting pursuant to Penal Code 403. Your understanding and cooperation are appreciated. Our first speaker is Keen Arste on a non-agendized item.
Hey, how's it going? Okay, so we have a problem. We have a problem with people speeding, and I'm wondering why the deputies are not taking care of this. Another issue is modified exhaust with the noise pollution. All day long, you get the loud exhaust from these vehicles up and down the street. It gets annoying to the point of frustration. Why is nothing being done about it? I don't understand this. You guys have a problem with, what is it called? You gotta pay for this, gotta pay. Why not write out these tickets? That way with the tickets, you'll be able to make that money back. Or pretty much make money, whatever you need to, what were you guys just saying earlier about, fixtures and all that stuff? You could use the money from the tickets to bring in what needs to be done. But my main question is, why is nothing being done about the speeders? Fatal accidents is every day, head-on collisions every day.
So we're not allowed to go for a dialogue back and forth, but what can I ask? Mr. Metzler, if maybe we can ask one of the deputies to speak with them in the back, get some roads and everything. Contact, okay. Someone will get in touch with you though, but we can't go back and forth with you with a dialogue, but
I got it.
the city manager's office will be in touch with you and we'll find out what's going on and we
Okay,
can help out. okay.
so go sit down.
If you're done, you can, but
Yes, that's
it'll-
my main issues.
it'll be a conversation led within the next 72 hours. He'll have someone in touch with you.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you very much.
If you
Thank
could
you.
please provide us your phone number over here, sir. Over here. Our next speaker is Deanne Hutchins on a non-agendized item.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Welcome, Ms. Hodges.
I was reading in the Daily Press the article about the point of the homeless count for our area, and then I also went and continued to do some research as far as our county and that kind of thing, because the homeless issue in our city is something that I'm very concerned about, and I wish we could do more for. My comments are, I was comparing population and homeless population between Fontana and Victorville. I picked Fontana because I drive through Fontana semi-regularly because we go down to Kaiser. So we're around Fontana some. Fontana has a population of 212,475. Now, these are all figures that I got off the internet. Victorville's population is 137,221. That's 75,254 fewer residents than Fontana. Fontana homeless population is 260. That's 0.12% of their total population. It's not 12%, it's 0.12%. Victorville's is 611. Victorville's, that's 0.45% of the total population. Victorville's homeless is 351 more than Fontana. Why? What's Fontana doing that Victorville isn't or can't? And I understand these are also, I mean, it's not just the people on the streets, it's also considered the people in the shelters or in any other kind of transitional housing. But Victorville is the second highest population, homeless population in the entire county. And I just wonder what other cities are doing that they're able to keep theirs at a lesser percentage than we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no additional speakers this evening.
Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to start the public hearings. Our first business in order is vacation and abandonment of offers of dedicated at the Southern California Logistics Airport. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This item involves the ultimate abandonment of offer of dedication for roadway purposes. And these were done as a function of parcel map recordation dating back to 1972 and 1976. The reason this item is before you tonight is it actually involves property owned by the Southern California Logistics Airport Authority. And this was property ultimately acquired as a part of the runway expansion project nearly 20 years ago. And so effectively, these properties have been identified as not needing roads. And in fact, we haven't planned the use of these offers of dedication in our circulation element nor our specific plan. And so effectively, they're encumbering the property for some other type of use. In fact, it's likely that once these offers of dedication can be removed from the properties likely could be merged and used for development related purposes. So effectively, this is involving approximately 11 acres of property at the very north end of the primary runway, which is runway 1735. And so with that, because it involves the abandonment of the offer of dedication, that's what's triggering the need for the public hearing. And so with that, the item has been authored by your city engineer, Mr. Freddie Bonilla. He is not here today, but we do have Harry Mayo in attendance to answer any questions that you might have that I can't answer myself.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council open and conduct a public hearing to consider the vacation of easements on Southern California Logistics Airport property. Hear evidence offered by persons interested in the vacation. Find the vacation not subject to the environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA guidelines sections 15060C2 and 15060C3, and adopt resolution number 24-039 vacating the dedications as described and depicted by the exhibits attached thereto and ordering the recordation of the same.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to do technical questions from the council members. We're going to start with Councilmember Irvin.
Thank you very much. Mr. Metzler, I tried to read through this, the backup material and understand, what was happening. I understand the, abandonment. What happens to the properties once we abandon? Explain the process to me because I couldn't follow.
So really what's happening here is the offers of dedication are basically paper streets. They're not real, physically existing. It's an offer to provide that area as right of way to actually build roadways if the property were to develop,
Okay.
being that the roadways aren't necessary based upon current ownership and certainly current vision. That's why the request has come through to eliminate those paper streets. So effectively, you don't have that potential for recordation to affect the ultimate use of that property. If you were to try to develop the property today with those offers in place and you respected the offers of dedication and actually recorded the right of ways, it would limit your ability to use that property in the aggregate. And so by eliminating the offers, you can actually then aggregate the property to assemble a much larger piece that could probably accommodate a larger form of development.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions?
No, I just needed to understand what happens, how the process works. I appreciate you. Thank you.
No problem. Councilmember Gomez?
It's my understanding that all these properties with all these easements belong to the city of Victorville. Is that correct?
Actually, the airport authority, which is a separate legal entity of the city.
How did the engineering staff of SCLA determine the feasibility of vacating and abandoning the mentioned easements, and what factors did they consider in the research?
Well, certainly a lot of that was articulated in the staff reports, beginning with the fact that none of those rights of ways have been incorporated in the city's circulation element or even the specific plan, which also has a traffic component to it as well. So the roadway system governing the specific plan for the airport or the city don't see the need for any of these. So any of these rights of way. So that was probably the impetus. That along with the fact that staff had been aware for some time, just had never really got around to prioritizing this cleanup. But certainly since we're seeing increased development interest around the airport, what staff is believing is necessary so as to not hinder the potential for development on this property and surrounding property, to eliminate these easements to free up that encumbrance to make those properties more ready or suitable for development.
And what challenges arise in accessing and maintaining these certain easements within the SLA fenced airfield? And how does this impact the decision-making process regarding their abandonment?
None that I'm aware of, and therefore there shouldn't be any negative impact with the decision-making process.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones?
None, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harriman?
I have none.
Thank you, and I have none. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll close the public hearing. I'll invite a motion for this item.
Madam Mayor, I move that the council take action in accordance with the recommendations set forth on the agenda as to points 3 and 4, with points 1 and 2 already having been disposed.
Second.
Thank you. I have a first by Councilmember Jones, a second by Councilmember Irvin. Councilmember Jones, any comments?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Irvin?
No comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Harriman?
No.
Councilmember Gomez?
Yes, it's not my understanding that I know particularly how we're going to see the development of this particular pieces of land coming together, but that's not within the scope. So I'm just going to go ahead and look at the abandonment and the vacationing of each one and consider that the development is something that is vastly needed for SCLA. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have none. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote, please?
Councilmember Gomez,
Aye.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. At this time, we've now taken action to approve points 3 and 4 of staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item number 2, Mojave Drive and Village Drive Pipeline Repair Project, Notice of Exemption and Award of Construction Contract. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This item involves the relocation of an existing publicly owned water main system owned by the the Victorville Water District. And the location of this project is at the northwest corner of Village Drive and Mojave Drive. There's a gas station at that location. And apparently many years ago when that site was developed out, there was either an existing or an installed public main system that currently exists today that's situated on private property. Recently, staff had learned of a leak affecting that line. The leak was apparently at a location where the line was capped, but had previously satisfied or served a fire hydrant that's no longer existing. Anyhow, in discovering the leak, staff determined a better approach to that system and effectively having the system located in public right-of-way, which is more typical to in terms of location of our public mains or our water main systems. And so this item is effectively award of contract to not only fix the leak, but relocate the existing line out of private property back into public right-of-way. So it's much more accessible to the city in the event of a need down the road to fix the line. So with that, this item is co-authored by your city engineer and your director of public works and water. Mr. Doug Matthews is actually here in attendance. To the extent you have questions that I can't answer, he's available to answer any additional questions you might have.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable Victorville Water District Board of Directors open and conduct a public hearing, receive testimony regarding the proposed capital improvement project, close the public hearing, approve the notice of exemption, and authorize staff to file the notice of exemption with the Office of Planning and Research and the county clerk, and award a construction contract to Kelly's Underground Construction, Inc. in the amount of $159,197 for the Mojave Drive and Village Drive Pipeline Repair Project.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to do technical questions from the council members. We're going to start with Councilmember Harriman.
Keith, the contract was awarded to a local high desert contractor.
If the council approves this item tonight, I do believe Kelly's is local.
And they're on our vendor list. We've used them many times.
Yes, and the way this worked is we did an informal bid. We reached out to those vendors that we've already qualified that are on our on-call contractors list. And so with that, we sought proposals from 3 of them. 2 actually responded. Kelly's from Apple Valley. I believe they're from Apple Valley.
They are.
Okay. Was the low bidder.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gomez?
How does securing the exploratory excavation with steel plates impact the customer's business operation and public safety? And what are the immediate fiscal implications?
Well, the steel grates effectively would allow a trenching to occur and installation to take place, but allow, while the trench is open, the steel plates effectively allow a vehicle to, say, traverse over without harming the pavement or the pipeline, the trench, or even the vehicle.
Regarding the future reconstruction of the Mojave Drive, what are the anticipated long-term fiscal impacts of the current repair scope? And how will these expenses influence future budgetary planning?
I'm not aware of a long-term fiscal impact. I certainly know from an operational standpoint, this will actually make it easier for us as the water district to be able to access that line, and in the future would mitigate any further disruption to business, as we've tried to minimize in this particular case.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Irving?
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And I have none. This time I'll open up the public hearing. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
No, Madam Mayor.
At this time now, I'll close the public hearing. I'll invite a motion for this item.
Madam Mayor, move to adopt staff's recommendations for points 3 and 4.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. I have a first by Councilmember Irving, a second by Councilmember Harriman. Councilmember Irving, any comments on this motion?
No comments, thank you.
Councilmember Harriman?
I have none.
Councilmember Jones?
None.
Councilmember Gomez?
Not at the moment, thank you.
And I have none. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote?
Councilmember Gomez.
Aye.
Councilmember Irving.
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We've now taken action to approve points 3 and 4 of staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item number 3, annual budget for the fiscal year 2024, 2025. I don't know if I want to do this, but Mr. Metzler, would you introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Yes, I will. I do have a presentation queued up. Presentation that's an abbreviated version of the presentation that we shared with you a couple of weeks ago. So if in the back we can cue that up. Okay, and so first of all, for you all as a council and also for those members of the public that are here for the first time seeing this presentation, I'll welcome you to this budget presentation for the fiscal year 24-25 budget cycle. This presentation that I'm sharing with you is a direct follow-up from the workshop of May 14th. Where at that workshop, we took a much deeper dive into the very voluminous document that is the proposed budget that's for you. And so this presentation effectively is a watered down, abbreviated version at a high level. But as you all know, we've shared with you the budget books. You have all the budget detail. And so we certainly are prepared to go into the greater detail if you so choose. But that notwithstanding, as you all know, the budget in and of itself is probably one of your most important policy decisions of the year, as this budget, as any budget, sets forth effectively your spending plan for the upcoming fiscal year. So it certainly gives an idea not only to yourselves, but also the community and stakeholders as to what your vision is for the next year and where you effectively intend to focus your money resources. As you all know, and we do this every year, but the budget preparation in and of itself is a major team effort, and that certainly starts with you as the city council, as the policymakers, effectively setting the priorities, us as staff interpreting those priorities and trying to translate those priorities and even goals into the budget document. Of course, the executive leadership team oversees the executive team directly works with the leadership team, and the leadership team is at the department head level, and they're the ones effectively responsible for bringing the needs of the departments to you effectively to try to achieve your goals. However, I need to recognize some individuals that specifically live and breathe this effort, and they have been living and breathing this effort since we closed out the mid-year, which was back in March. And it's fairly routine for us that once we get done with mid-year budget cycle, we roll right into fiscal budget cycle. So it seems like in many cases a 6 to 9 month process of budget review that we're going through. But certainly your finance team is led by Carmen Kuhn, your finance director. She couldn't do this without the help of Christian Dominguez, who's here in the audience, Rosa Roman, Cheyenne Everett, and Jordan Hand also have been critical in at least assembling the budget for you in this presentable format. Since we met back on May 14th, I think it was, May 14th. We have taken your comments at that meeting. We've actually taken input from you all. Since then, we've also been provided with updated information since then to give you a better budget, a budget that we're more confident about from a spending plan perspective. And so what we've done to kick things off with this presentation is, and you have the materials in front of you, is to at least share with you very high level again, what the changes have been since the May 14th workshop. So effectively, these are the differences between that version and tonight's version before you. And so based on new information, this budget does include a $1.2 million expenditure to upgrade the fire protection system for the large hangars out at the airport that are currently fed by a foam suppression system. The foam suppression systems have been determined a problem in the sense that foam contains PFAS. And so there is a nationwide move to move away from the use of PFAS in practically everything. But as it affects the airport, it's certainly forcing us to change how we conduct fire suppression in those hangars. And so you'll recall, resulting from having awarded a contract to actually bring on a designer. Since we met at the workshop, we've also met with the designer, and we've learned a lot more about what the ultimate scope of work is going to look like. And so with that, that's why you see a change from what was originally in the May 14th version of $350,000 to what now is an estimate of $1.2 million. And it's effectively something that we physically got to change out if we want to continue to use those hangars. Why it's important is the hangars, as you know, are a major revenue generator for the airport operations. We also have identified, it was recently brought to our attention, the condition of an existing building, Building 321, that's actually owned by the airport. It's located off the airport. It's north of the Plastipac manufacturing plant on Sabre Street. And it's the old Air Force headquarter building. We've actually had recently been made aware of some condition concerns, and we've actually sent staff to actually reduce some of the risks on site, better cleaning up the site, if you will. But this is a facility that has a tremendous amount of resource and reuse potential. And so with that, one of the things that we want to work on in this budget that's also taken place since the May 14th meeting is actually doing some restorative demolition, basically cleaning up a lot of the vandalized parts of the building, getting down to the bones of the building, the structural elements of the building, so that we can potentially reuse that building for some other type of purpose. So that's effectively a site prep expense there. There was a small change in the price from last last workshop to this, involving the sheriff's contract, just a minor change basically to incorporate the SRO cost that was actually in the Schedule A that you approved at the last council meeting. So this number really should not be new to you if you compared this number to what we put in the Schedule A at the last meeting. And then you have some small changes, traffic management center here at City Hall. There's also some third-party auditing services fees that we wanted to be able to include, and then a couple other minor changes, a hydraulic mower, sweeper truck, things of that nature. But I think I covered the major ones since our last meeting. And so I think to begin this presentation, I must share with you again that this budget has been prepared relying on all 7 of our adopted multi-year goals and priorities found in our strategic plan as guidance. It's a budget that embraces our organizational values, which include excellent customer service, integrity, accountability, and transparency. With this budget, the city will move closer to achieving its adopted vision. And I just have to say again, thank you for now having participated in our second strategic plan. Without this document, with this document, I should say, it takes out a tremendous amount of guesswork in terms of where this council wants to go and what it wants to try to achieve over time. And so with that strategic plan and using that as guidance, it certainly makes our budgeting process easier in terms of identifying priorities in your spending plan. Next slide, please. Okay, and so with that, at the high level, what this budget does include, and this is citywide, and so you've got a 2024-2025 fiscal budget where citywide revenues are programmed at 354 million, and then total expenditures at $377 million. This budget, as we have grown accustomed to in recent years, does have what we characterize as a deficit spend, meaning that the expenditures exceed revenues. How do you balance that if you're required to have a balanced budget? And the answer is we certainly have unencumbered fund balance, basically savings available to help cash flow this difference. And one of the things that I want to point out, you're certainly aware, but certainly we have new members of the public here. One of the things that I like to point out regularly is that with this citywide budget, the citywide budget involves not only the city, but all of its affiliated entities. We have funds in the order of 84 funds, and I like to characterize those as basically 84 small business type operations that include general fund type funds, special funds, enterprise funds, fiduciary funds, all serving different purposes. And one of the things that I do typically point out for all of your benefit is that while we see a $377.8 million expenditure plan, that's not, I wouldn't characterize that as a tremendous amount of money, especially when you divide that amongst all of the 84 funds that we're responsible for managing. And so while, we're used to dealing with complaints about why we haven't done, perhaps additional pothole repair or whatever the complaint might be, we have limited amounts of resources that we try to manage as prudently as possible and deal with what are your true priorities as adopted in your policy document. I would tell you that the deficit spend does not exist if you don't have the significant amount of capital improvements, and many of those capital improvements, including what contributes to the deficit spend, is carryover from previous year. So with that, while we do show on the aggregate a deficit spend, we have cash flowed, and we'll show you some cash flows of some of your more discretionary funds to give you an example of how we actually project forward to make sure that you actually have an ability to fund the deficit spend. On the general fund, and we typically start out with the general fund because that is your most discretionary fund. It's a fund that effectively has no restrictions in use. It's very traditionally a fund that you prioritize, and councils of the past have prioritized first public safety. And so with that, a general fund is also very typically viewed as the fund that effectively is a measuring stick of how healthy the city is. And so with that, we do propose a deficit spend on the general fund in the order of $3.18 million. There's slides following this that'll show you how it cash flows to get you comfortable with that deficit spend. But to give you perspective on the revenue side of the equation, your largest revenues that contribute to that $101 million are going to be your sales tax revenues, your property tax revenues, cost allocation charges, your charges for service such as permit fees. And I will tell you, just as we do every year, we are extremely conservative on the revenue forecasts. And we're much more confident in knowing what the expenditure forecasts are. And so with that, it's very typical. It's not uncommon for us to budget a deficit spend and find out at the end of the year we actually have a surplus in the actual revenues generated. This slide is intended to show you the breakdown of where the $105 million expenditure takes place. And certainly this budget does emphasize public safety of your general fund, almost 60%. In fact, it's 59% of your budget in the aggregate is spent on public safety. And as we define public safety, that's going to be your sheriff contract, your police services. It's going to be your fire services, but it's also going to include your code enforcement and animal control services. And code enforcement also includes the expansion now into the homeless engagement team. And so with that, on the police side, particularly, you saw the Schedule A, that's 151 personnel, which includes 107 sworn and 44 non-sworn. And of course, also includes your mall resource officer and your school resource officer. I will take this time because there was a comment from the public that I think relates to this presentation, and that's with respect to what's being done on the traffic side of the House. And so while there may be, just as we're used to hearing things that nothing's being done, that's not quite the truth, especially as it relates to us having recently adopted Measure P in 2020. One of the things that was a direct result of Measure P being adopted in 2020 was that we were actually able to add an additional 12 bodies to the Sheriff's Service contract. And among those personnel added to the Sheriff's Service contract, 5 sworn deputies were added that were placed directly into our traffic enforcement. And one of the things that I've seen personally, and certainly the captain can speak to it in greater detail, is we've beefed up dramatically our traffic enforcement. And I've actually seen, because of course I know what to look for out in the public, I actually have seen a dramatic increase in the amount of tickets, the amount of pulling people over for traffic violations, really with the intent of trying to curb the behavior, because driving behavior is the real problem. And so we've used the physical presence of the deputies to try to curb the behavior. But what a lot of the public isn't completely aware of, because it isn't immediately distinguishable, is we have multiple elements of operation that makes up the police department. But very commonly on the street, what we see are deputy patrol cars, but we don't necessarily know the difference between the deputy actually serving the patrol side of the operation or the traffic side of the operation. And so the bigger of the operation is the patrol, because those are the deputies that are managing the beats and actually responding directly to the priority calls. But we do have dedicated traffic deputies that, 5 or 6 deputies are dedicated to that division. And so we've increased it dramatically. We've seen the numbers increase. Certainly wish we could have more traffic deputies. And certainly one of our constraints is, as you know, is not having a large enough police department. We're actually working towards that. And once we have more space to actually house more deputies, then we can actually beef up not only traffic, but patrol. But I can attest for you all, including for the public, that we have seen a dramatic investment on the traffic side. We're actually seeing more people getting pulled over, encouraging the change in the behavior, and also issuing a lot more traffic citations, certainly a lot more than we did prior to Measure P being adopted. And so with that, we've invested dramatically on the police side. That budget, as you know, is $38 million. We've also, a big ticket expenditure on this general fund is your fire department. In the fire department, we operate with 5 stations. We have 5 frontline engine companies, 1 trunk company, and 3 medical squads that are effectively the bulk of your fire department operations. That's about 87 members, 87 staff members comprising the fire department. And then code enforcement certainly as well as a part of Measure P. We've seen a dramatic investment on the code enforcement side, where we've probably grown from a percentage standpoint the greatest by having added now in this budget 35 staff members. And that's your code enforcement, your animal control, and your homeless engagement team. And so this slide particularly is to illustrate what we go through on every fund, but in this particular case related to to the general fund, we actually take your budgeted revenue and expenditures for the current fiscal year, I'm sorry, for the upcoming fiscal year 24-25, and then we forecast that forward for the next 4 years to get a 5-year projection. And really what we're trying to do here, and again, it's not new to us experiencing what is considered a structural deficit. Structural deficit is when your revenues structurally get outpaced by expenditures. We're not unfamiliar with that. It's a concept that we were very much aware of before Measure P as an example. It's a real issue, especially as we know expenditures track at a greater pace in terms of inflationary factor than revenues. And so we do take a very conservative outlook in those projections, and what we do is tie that to a cash flow. And what we're doing effectively in this cash flow is considering your revenues, expenditures, but also what unencumbered fund balance you have to be able to actually satisfy the deficit spend. And so with that, this slide is intended to show you that we can satisfy the deficit spend while at the same time achieving your adopted general fund reserve target, which in this case is 17%. And certainly the forecast shows you while it's declining over time, we're still able to project based upon known information to us today that we can project out 5 years and still achieve our 17% general fund reserve target. You've seen this graphical illustration before, but it's basically taking the previous chart the previous table and putting into chart format. And effectively the visual that you're getting here is the orange line is your general fund reserve target. And so long as that there's blue bars above that, that's showing you've got sufficient unencumbered fund balance to basically that is in excess of your general fund reserve target. Measure P we've touched on, but we do account for Measure P separately. That was the mandate of the council when Measure P was approved. We also have, we actually have an oversight committee that's responsible for reviewing our budget before you even get it, to make sure that what's being proposed in the budget is consistent with the intent of Measure P when it was first a ballot measure. But then they're also responsible for, at the end of the year, looking at the audit and making sure the actual expenditures were consistent with the Measure P effort. And so with that, we've achieved that designation from your Measure P committee that what's before you here today is presented in a way that's consistent with the original intent. And so this slide is designed to show or share with you that we do have cash on hand in the order of $32.2 million. So the fund is healthy from a cash perspective, and that's what actually helps you get through the deficit spend in this particular case, where you've got $33.4 million in revenue and $37.3 million in expenditure. So there is going to be a dependency on your cash reserve, basically to get through the year. Some of the big ticket items in this Measure P budget certainly is the police station reserve. One of the things that we've identified to help defray some of the cost of what that ultimate police station is going to cost is start setting aside into a reserve account. In this budget, we're actually setting aside again another $4 million so that $4 million can be carried forward to offset the ultimate construction cost when we get to that point. You do see other big ticket spends in this budget to include the library clubhouse renovation. We've got a tremendous number of fire department tools, just as we received the new truck, the ladder truck. There's a lot of tooling that has to go into that that's actually proposed in this budget. And also in this budget, you've got about $600,000 in remodel design for stations 311 and 313. Similar to what we talked about on the general fund reserve forecast, we do the same thing for Measure P as we've adopted a similar reserve target of 17%. This is because it's a newer revenue source. You can certainly see the reserve level being very high, much higher than certainly what we're used to seeing. That we're requiring as a 17%. Graphically, with the orange line again being your reserve target, you can see that your unencumbered fund balance or your cash is dramatically greater than your reserve target. So Measure P is a fiscally healthy fund as it stands currently. We do like to draw attention to our enterprise funds and special funds. And for those that aren't familiar with the nature of those funds, an enterprise fund, I think the best examples are the Southern California Logistics Airport. Your water district is another example of an enterprise fund where they basically are funds where the nature of the business is a business unit in and of its own. And so for an enterprise fund, those operations have revenue generating capabilities, but they also have responsibilities to spend the revenues that they generate for the specific purposes of the enterprise. And so good example, classic example, and there's actually federal rules, FAA rules that require it. But in the case of the airport, as an example, there's a very basic rule. Whatever is generated on the airport in terms of revenue has to be spent on the airport. That's a basic FAA law. But that's also fundamental concept in enterprise accounting, where we have to basically account for the revenues and making sure the expenditures are connected to that basic operation. Same would go with the water district as an example. Special funds are funds such as your road funds, where we generate funds directly, perhaps from the state, could be Measure I, could be SB1, but there's very strict restrictions on the use of those funds. And so some of our more notorious or more known funds are outlined here in this particular chart, and we've summarized it all in one chart just to give you a general perspective of the revenue versus expenditures. And then also the surplus or deficit spend. And so starting out with the sewer sanitary fund, we're currently in year 2 of the rate plan. The overall rate revenue increase is 5%. So this does include a 5% rate increase, and that was the rate increase that was actually adopted in our rate plan. The average rate increase across customer classes is 7%. And so with that, that is consistent with the rate plan that we do have. The solid waste fund, we're currently in year 2 of the rate plan for that fund. Solid waste, as an example, is the fund that's responsible for all of the trash and refuse services. So not only is it the hauling associated with the collection of the refuse, it's your black can, it's your green can, it's your blue can. So that's the recycling operation, the organics operation, and also the material that goes to the landfill. The rate plan that we adopted has an overall rate increase of 6.3%, and the rate increases depending on customer class range from 4.5 to 8.2%, and those are in your adopted rate plan. Southern California Logistics Airport has a deficit spend largely because of this is a heavy capital spend year with respect to roofs. As you've seen, we just talked about the foam suppression system that eventually has to be rebuilt basically. And so it's a very capital intense year for the airport. Otherwise, had it not been for the capital, the airport does cash flow to where revenues exceed expenditures. So based upon its cash strength, nothing to worry about there in my view. VMIS, we do have a surplus on the VMIS side of the house. That's your municipal utility service, both at Foxborough and largest out at the airport, where you're actually in the retail sales of electricity and natural gas. We don't propose any rate increases with this budget for VMIS. And it's worth knowing that the VMIS rate structure that we currently have for electricity for our customers, both at Foxborough and at SCLA, our rates are about 21.6% lower than SoCal Edison. So we're extremely competitive in terms of our rate structure already for electricity. And then finally, the street lighting fund, our other special fund that pays for the electricity, the maintenance, and there also is a capital component for street lights. And with that, the street light fund, this budget does include a 15% rate increase, effectively taking the current rate of $19.45 a year to $22.37 a year. And so that's just the magnitude of the dollar increase when you compare it to the 15% rate increase. There's a lot more capital improvements that are here. We touched on a lot of them in the previous presentation. I've got a few here that I think are good highlights for what to expect in this upcoming fiscal year. And so first, certainly you're familiar. We've been tracking this one fairly closely. Of course, we're responding to the surprise that we had first quarter, second quarter of last year when our shelter operator gave us notice that they're shutting down. We effectively have been in a hurried scramble, if you will, to open our own animal shelter facility. As you know, we've typically relied on outside services to perform that service, and our animal control department largely has been response to and transport for animals, but we're going to have to be much more involved. So we've actually worked out an arrangement with the Victor Valley High School District to take on the old Maverick School site located on East Street over adjacent to Evadale Park and our wellness center. And so this budget actually contemplates about $2.6 million all funded from Measure P, basically to retrofit that facility, repurpose that facility so that we can actually house more animals, take care of more animals. It'll give us a capacity ultimately of about 190 to 200 kennels once that facility's complete. Ridgecrest Road rehabilitation. There's a stretch of Ridgecrest Road extending from Bear Valley Road to Paiute that's in pretty poor shape. That's actually a stretch of Ridgecrest that's actually entirely within the city's jurisdictional boundary. You're probably aware that north of Paiute, which is where the Endeavor Elementary School is, we actually share jurisdictional boundary with the county down the middle of Ridgecrest Road from Paiute northerly. But this is a section of Ridgecrest that's entirely within our jurisdiction, and it's in need of some serious attention. And so with that, this item actually begins the process of designing and ultimately constructing those improvements at that stretch of Ridgecrest. Funding source associated with that, we've tried to divvy it up, but effectively you've got a dependency on Measure I, SB1 road money, the gas tax money, in the order of ultimately $2.3 million. We do have a stretch of Bear Valley Road that's in this budget as well, and that's the stretch of Bear Valley Road from Bellflower to Monte Vista. That's approximately $1.9 million funded also by Measure I, SB1, and some water district money. The Roy Rogers Drive Rehabilitation Project, many of you are familiar with that, just north of City Hall here, a stretch from Amargosa to I-15 and possibly extending over to La Paz. But we have some pretty significant needs in correcting some of the alligatoring issues that are on that roadway. And so effectively, we've identified multiple funding sources to take on approximately $1.8 million of improvements that we're currently budgeting to Roy Rogers Road. Do have some pipeline replacements, and we do have a pretty big one planned on the water district side of the house. And this is a 1-mile pipeline that will actually transport water from the MWA main line basically to our reservoirs there at Sycamore and Amethyst. And the connection is intended to give us an opportunity to blend water better, to help improve the ultimate water quality for the upper and lower zones that are connected to that reservoir system at that location. And then as we're nearing the end, we have proposed, and you'll actually deal with it on a separate item. I think it's item 10 or item 11, which is the benefits resolution in the regular part of the agenda. But to give you highlights of what that includes, and we did discuss this at the workshop, we do have some enhancements to salaries and benefits. We also do have position adds as a part of this budget. And so what on the salary benefits side of the equation, you will see for both represented and non-represented employees, cost of living allowance across the board of 3%. You'll recall when we presented the actual cost of living adjustment, we actually identified it as higher than the 3%. But based upon the review of all staff, and the totality of this budget, the recommendation by us is that we include a 3% COLA across the board. This budget also does include fringe benefit increases. It does add weekend differential pay for those that have been subjected to working weekends, that have been used to working weekday shifts. The department that I can think of that's probably affected most recently and the most is probably your code enforcement, especially as we've transitioned to 7 days a week service. And so we're having to restructure the schedule, restructure shifts so that employees are working on those weekends. So effectively, this includes a compensatory effort to encourage them to work those weekends by providing an enhancement to the actual pay for the actual hours worked on those weekends. It does include paid bereavement for both part-time and full-time employees. Altogether, you see 20 positions being added to the table of org. And we also have a proposed reorganization at the executive level included in this budget. And so the better detail of the salary and benefit, starting with the fringe, there's two components of the healthcare allowance that we offer to city employees. And that's the fringe benefit first, which is currently $900. This budget is proposing to increase that fringe benefit available to represented, non-represented full-time employees and retirees. That also is available to council members. Council members also enjoy in that benefit. And so this budget proposes to increase the fringe amount from 900 to 950. There also is a concept currently in our existing benefits resolution where we have a healthcare matching subsidy for those employees that have a +1 or a family. And so effectively, there's a sharing relationship we have with employees where currently we share up to $700 in healthcare costs above the 900. And so this budget actually contemplates increasing the healthcare matching subsidy from $700 to $800 or $100 in total per month. That also is available to represented and non-represented full-time employees. That component is not available currently to council members. We also have the weekend differential pay that I touched on, and that calculates out to being 5% of the base pay increase to those hours worked on the weekends for those that are subjected to working a weekend schedule now. And then we've also included paid bereavement program for full-time employees that would be up to 80 hours, non-represented employees, and then 56 hours for for part-time employees. We've seen tuition costs go up, and so as our tuition reimbursement program offers $3,000, this budget proposes increasing that amount to $5,000 to help defray some of the educational costs associated with going back to college and getting advanced education. And then we also have a slight modification to the lifetime medical program that we have, effectively changing for employees that are hired after July 1st, 2024. The actual lifetime medical offering won't take place for those employees until after having served 15 years of service. Currently, that's available after 8 years of service, so that'd be a change there. This chart is really to show the 20 positions from the current fiscal year to the upcoming fiscal year, and also identifies where those employees are. This 560 employee count, full-time employee count, does not include the sheriff contract. There's about 150 under the sheriff contract. And I share that with you because if you were to add the two together, that's about 710 that we're responsible for directly and indirectly. I think just to sum it up, with that human resource count, Victorville is a big city from a personnel perspective. And then finally, we're getting to the end here. We do have a proposed reorganization at the executive level. As it currently stands, the executive structure exists with myself and 2 deputy city managers. And this is effectively our reporting structure. Though the council doesn't report to me, I report to the council. I have included this in there to show all of the areas of responsibility that I take on directly. And I do prioritize a great amount of attention to all of the council's needs. And so with that, this is how we currently function. We do have a planned scheduled retirement by one of our executive members at the end of this year. And so with that, along with some evaluations I've had just over the years of the organization, we certainly have been thinking about trying to structure it to where I, as the manager, can be freed up even better for you as the council, but then also to consider better managing, delegating some of the workload from the deputy city managers, and even spreading it out to make their workloads more manageable. And so with that, we do have a twofold transition structure and then a permanent structure. And with the retiring deputy city manager this year, we've got about 6 months of service with her. And so what we are actually proposing in this structure is to have a 6-month transition structure. It'd be a period of time where effectively I have 4 deputy city managers. One would be principally responsible for effectuating the transition of her duties, but then also helping transition the incoming deputy city managers, mainly taking advantage of all of her institutional knowledge and being able to have the next 6 months to pass that along so that we have the best chance of not only transferring the wealth of knowledge, but also using it as an opportunity to prepare the new deputy city managers coming in to be much more ready, not only with the institutional knowledge, but also with the cultural approach that we take in managing the organization. So this is the proposed structure for the first 6 months of the year with 4 deputy city managers, and then we'll trim it down starting January 1st with a 3 deputy city manager structure reporting directly to myself. And this would be effectively our delegation of duties in terms of departments of the city. And so with that, that's the narrowed down version of the budget presentation that we gave to you on the 14th. Certainly we have the budget book in front of you. I certainly have my executive team available, but I also have leadership team in the audience, along with members of the finance department. And I believe amongst us all, we can answer any question you have.
Yes, Madam Mayor. That your Honorable City Council, also sitting as the Victorville Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, Victorville Water District, and the City of Victorville as housing asset successor, open and conduct a public hearing, close the public hearing, accept the transmittal letter from the Measure P Oversight Committee, adopt the attached resolution numbers 24-037, LBT 24-002, SCLAA 24-003, RSA 24-001, VWD 24-006, and CHAS 24-003 respectively for the establishment and adoption of the fiscal year 2024-2025 annual budget. That the Honorable City Council adopt resolution number 24-048, affirming the general fund reserve policy, City Council Policy CP 23-01. That your Honorable City Council adopt resolution number 24-038, establishing and adopting the fiscal year 2024-2025 annual appropriations limit in the amount of $1,491,904,943 pursuant to California State Constitution, Article, I don't know my no Roman numerals, 13B, government spending limitation.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to do technical questions from the council members. I'm going to start with Councilmember Herman.
I have one question. Have we eliminated 6 positions from the fire department, or is that due to the interim fire chief, transitioning?
Certainly, we showed, and I believe we showed a different number in the workshop, but we've had some organizational shift, predominantly on the prevention side. And so prevention had been largely housed in the fire department. We're housing prevention in the building department for now. There's a long-term goal of actually putting prevention back in fire, but that reduction that you're seeing is because we've put those positions onto the building side of the house.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Irving?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, Mr. Metzler, I'd like to say thank you for that very informative presentation. And to the staff members who helped to prepare this document, I want to thank you for your dedication and hard work in preparation of the budget. I do have a few questions. My first question, they're simple questions in my opinion. Just so that I understand, you tethered capital improvement projects to deficit spending for a couple, yes. What were the projects for water and sewer? Did you mention them?
I did include one of the big water items, which was the pipeline, the mile-long pipeline for water quality improvements, basically connecting our reservoir system at Sycamore and Amethyst to an MWA R-cubed pipeline. And so that was the big one. I think it was a $6 million number.
Okay, and for
And sewer, that was water.
water, okay.
And bear with me. Yeah, that was the 6.2 on page 21 of the presentation. I don't recall including as a part of this presentation today sewer. I'm sure I did as a part of the workshop presentation. We can actually pull, see if I can pull capital for the sewer side. Unless Mr. Matthews knows sewer capital off the top of his head.
Excuse me.
Yes, thank you. I'm trying to find them as well, but I'm thinking there's C2 and C3. So I think they're
C2 and
pipeline
C-
projects.
Keith, I can jump in if you'd like. I found the
Please.
pages. So, yeah, the two main large projects are capacity improvement projects. They're expanding the size of the pipes, so to speak. So we
Okay.
have, the first one is $1.2 million approximately, and the second one is about 4.5 million.
4.5 million? Okay, thank you. Okay, I have a few questions. This is just because I just want to know, in terms of cybersecurity, I was thinking we would increase expenditures in that area. Are we good in that area?
I'm going to say yes, but there's probably a much better explanation to it than that. I'd like first for Deputy City Manager Smith to speak to the money side of things, because we've certainly spent a tremendous amount given the incident that we experienced. But I'd also like Mr. Mazarul Islam, who's your IT official, to speak to the whether or not we're good part.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a big picture overview. One aspect of the cybersecurity protection that we have, and as you all know as council that we relied upon, was our insurance policy. So we actually kept and increased our cyber insurance policy. So that's one form of protection. I know you all know the details by updates from us on how that helped us get through. We bore a lot of the cost to protect ourselves and increase our security standpoint. And without going into a lot of specifics, we did that in this fiscal year. And we are continuing many of those services into the 24-25 fiscal year. I don't remember if there was anything additional added for cybersecurity because we've hit a lot in this current fiscal year we're in.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and member of the council. So with respect to the cybersecurity in terms of our posture, we're definitely in a better position we are now than we were. We've made significant investments on our infrastructure as far as IT goes, as well as acquisition of various application and software that defend against various attacks. So we've made those investments. We have few actual hardware acquisitions that are going to be acquired for this fiscal year 24 and 25.
I want to make sure that we are well protected in that area. Okay. And then lastly, this one's the increase in the budget for the airport regarding the fire protection. Why were we not aware of that prior to May 14th? I'm just curious. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So the contract that we awarded effectively for the design, the scoping work had just been authored, and we've actually had field reviews with them where they've actually been able to get on site and actually get inside the hangars and start some of that conceptual design effort. And so that is actually taken place. That bigger part of the work has actually taken place in the last 2 weeks. And so it's all new information to us based upon, what they're seeing as existing conditions with the foam suppression system and what it's likely going to take to get it to properly operate, not relying on foam, but instead water, just water.
Okay, I thought we had that conversation not long ago, did we not? Regarding the roofing and treatment, did we talk about that?
Roofing is a separate project. We just dealt with roofing of hangar 756, and that's the contract that we just awarded. I think that was also in the last council meeting where basically we're having to rebuild that. I'm sorry, refinish that roof. It's a 1954 vintage roof. Yeah.
Okay, then. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Jones?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Mr. Metzler, just springboarding a little bit off of Councilmember Irving's questions as it relates to the fire protection system. So it seems a little bit upside down to me. We undertook a contract before there was an on-site evaluation by the vendor.
So the contract that we awarded is actually an actual design service company. And so the information that we had was absent the professional designers coming on and starting with some of that conceptual investigation. Ultimately, before we go to bid, we're going to actually have to have the designer go from conceptual to final design stage. That is not done yet, but based upon the feedback and information that we've got in the conceptual stage, instead of coming back at a later date, because of the information that they shared with us, they have a general sense of the possible scoping of what that project is going to look like. We're absent the actual finished design. That's something we're working towards, but based upon estimating of what the concept is looking like, that's where we're coming back with new information as to what we think that cost is going to be.
Okay, well, I'm fairly familiar with PFAS. We deal with it a lot at VVWRA, so it's a huge, it's certainly a huge concern, and it's going to be increasingly great in the state of California for sure. And then on the issue of the sewer sanitary fund, I don't, again, what year are we in the rate plan on that one? We're deficit spending at 1.1 million.
Sewer, we're in year 2 of the rate plan.
And that was 5%?
The overall rate increase is 5%, and depending upon customer class, it could range from 7%, but the overall is 5%.
And then, let's see, when we're talking about fringe benefits. So did I understand you correctly to say that council member benefits for health, dental, and vision are contemplated in the budget? But is aligned with those of city employees?
Only the fringe.
Only the fringe. The healthcare matching cannot be done, is that correct?
I won't say that it cannot be done. That's not what's recommended in this budget.
Got it. Okay, and can you go over a little bit about what the healthcare matching subsidy really is?
Correct. And
Helps our employees.
correct. And so the two components, so I got to start with the fringe. And so all employees are first offered, along with council members, but speaking to the employees, all employees are offered the $900 fringe amount currently. And that number is that number in part because that's what's that amount has been what has been providing an individual that isn't a +1, that doesn't have a spouse or dependents to take care of. And so the allowance had been established basically to cover the individual. And so, but recognizing that not all employees are single, they have a spouse or dependents or both, we've seen a need and how we started going down this path of having what's called a matching subsidy, an additive benefit above and beyond the fringe subsidy for those that are experiencing the high cost of healthcare insurance, especially as you get to the +1 or to the family. And so for reasons more so related to trying to maintain our competitiveness from a recruitment standpoint, and that's how this started, is when we started evaluating salaries and trying to make sure we're competitive from a recruitment and a retention perspective. This was one of the areas a few years ago where we came back and identified it was necessary to make some enhancements so that we can offset some of those costs from the exorbitant healthcare costs that we're all experiencing. So effectively, the second component is the healthcare matching subsidy, currently pegged at $700. And so for an employee that has a family above the $900, we'll go dollar for dollar up to $700. And that in the aggregate will be used to pay for their total healthcare costs. As it currently stands, unless I'm corrected, the employees, I'll speak personally for myself, employee, spouse, dependents, and there are many like me in the organization where the subsidy isn't enough. Now, I'm not saying that because I'm looking for more, but there's definitely an impact to the larger employees here at the organization where the employees are still coming out of pocket even more than what the subsidy, the matching subsidy is offering. And so that is correct. Okay. And so this is intended to try to keep pace with those healthcare increases that we're experiencing.
Thank you. And then, so on that topic then, do council members at all participate in this and it's just not that $100 increase is not contemplated, or where are we on that?
The healthcare matching subsidy was not approved to include council members. And in fact, it was specifically disclosed as that being only available to employees 2 or 3 years ago. And that was because this was created mainly for employee competitiveness on the recruitment and retention side.
I remember that discussion. Okay, very good. And I will have comments, but I'm going to wait until we have a motion on the floor. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Mr. Metzler.
Thank you. Councilmember Gomez?
In what specific areas or projects does Measure P fund intend to allocate the approximate 26 million in expenditures outlined for fiscal years 24-25? And how does this allocation reflect the priorities identified by the Oversight Board?
Well, first, it's not the priorities of the Oversight Board that is their role. It's the role of the Oversight Board to make sure that what's included in this budget is consistent with the original intent. So, and that's what the Oversight Committee had done. The greater detail we certainly shared with you in the workshop and is certainly included in the binder. But of course, the largest of your expenditures for Measure P, you'll see on also the public safety side. So there certainly is our allocations going to fund the sheriff's contract. We've also, all of our expanded service since having started up the fire department and after Measure P, say for example, the stand up of Station 315, that's being funded by Measure P. All of your added fire service, such as the medical squads, the most recently added 2 medical squads, they're funded from Measure P. You're seeing expense on the animal control side, on the code enforcement side, the renovation at the animal control site, which is the old Maverick School, that'll be funded Measure P. I touched on it earlier. You've got a remodel design for stations 311 and 313 being funded. That's just a thumbnail. There's a lot more in there, but that should give you a sense.
Can you elaborate on the rationale behind the additional appropriations of approximately 3.9 million from the unencumbered Measure P fund balance to balance the budget for the 24-25? Actually, I already asked that question. Let me go to the next one. Can you elaborate on the rationale behind the additional appropriation of that 3.9 from that same unencumbered balance for the year? And how does that impact the financial sustainability and the effectiveness of those proposed enhancements that you elaborated on?
So I think I've touched on that question. In fact, I've answered it through page number 12 of the presentation. The fiscal impact, we certainly forecasted it. The 3.95 that you're talking about is basically a summation of not only the revenues and the expenditures, but also the capital that we've already touched on. And so that's the net effect that you're seeing there.
And how is Measure P being handled similarly to general funds in terms of managing the risks and the ensuring long-term financial planning? We do talk about the 17% as general fund and Measure P.
So yeah, we actually account and forecast and manage very similarly in the sense that they're both subjected to the same reserve target of 17%. So that's basically our threshold of determining the minimum level of unencumbered fund balance to maintain. And so in both of those cases, we rely on the 5-year forecast to determine if we're able to achieve that. And in both of these cases, and you saw on both of the slides, that we are able to do that.
And was Measure P utilized as an emergency fund for any other items of today's agenda?
No.
Okay. And how has the annual review process been adjusted in accordance with the policy, specifically considering the parameters that are outlined in the general reserve policy that was established on May 7 of 2023?
Well, we certainly use the strategic plan that we again just completed, and that's the basis for all of that we put forward in this budget. So that's what we rely on to bring this forward.
And then finally, just maybe I'll wait for the comment section for this one since it's not a question.
Thank you, Member Gomez. Mr. Metzler, I just have a couple of questions. And going with Councilmember Jones's questions reference the benefits. That's number 10, correct? That's not incorporated into this one?
So we do have a separate action item in the agenda to deal with the benefits resolution. However, the budget that's before you does include the actual appropriations of funds to accomplish what's set out in the agenda item 10 or 11, whichever number it is.
Okay. And in noticing and doing some quick math, with $377 million budget, $103 million is funds that will never, basically it's just for helps of our citizens. We're talking 45 million for police, 24 million for fire, and 34 million encumbered with parks, library, facilities, and recreation programs. So half of our budget is out there under programs. I'm not saying the police department is a program, but is mainly to serve our citizens, is what I'm trying to say, correct?
All public services that have, been determined as priority of this council. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing. Madam Clerk, are there any requests to speak?
No, Madam Mayor.
At this time, I'm going to close the public hearing. At this time, I'm going to make a motion that we follow staff's recommendation for passing the 2024-2025 budget.
Second.
First by Mayor Becerra, second by Mayor Pro Tem Harriman. My comments on the pending motion is congratulations to staff. Everything you guys do on a day-to-day basis, not just on this budget, but everything you guys do when you come here and you make this budget work. Please let the employees know. Thank you. For half of your budget goes to serve the public, and that's why you guys are here. And I thank you.
Madam Mayor, can you have a clarification, please? In your recommendation, it was to adopt the 2024-2025 budget. However, there are additional items listed in the recommendation that deal with our general fund reserve policy and appropriations limit. Is your recommendation to actually adopt points 3 through 6 on staff's recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Member Harriman, is that your understanding as well?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for bringing me back. Councilmember Harriman? Do you have any comments?
I would just reiterate what you said about staff and everything put together. Thank you.
Councilmember Irving?
I just want to state what I stated before. I want to extend my gratitude to staff for your long hours and your hard work in making this document come alive. And hopefully, well, this is a plan for the future. So we plan our work and work our plan. That's what we're going to do. Thank you.
I like that. Councilmember Gomez?
Yeah, I noticed that we do have an interactive website. However, as I perused through several of the links and clicked on them on my own, I noticed that there's a lot of issues missing from the actual internet site where this is posted versus what I have visually in front of me. There's a couple of things that I think are notable. So if our audience members or anyone from the public was trying to see what, for instance, the message from the finance director was, it was absent. It was a link that wasn't able to draw me in to read it there. There was other issues. I can share them with you at a later time, but I just wanted you guys to note some of the things that needed to be updated and added to the interactive site. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Metzler, first and foremost, thank you for your exceptional work on this budget. I know it takes months and months to get to D-Day, as it were. And thank you also for the great work of your team. It shows, and I am looking forward to another great year where when we do our State of the City, we're going to be able to say that it was a record year once again for a lot of accomplishment on for our city. I love the fact that you and your team are taking seriously the council's vision and direction for our city, taking a very proactive approach, and also remaining very faithful to our strategic plan. That's important, and I think it makes it very transparent for our community that we aren't just approving every shiny thing that comes our way, but we have contemplated things very seriously, knowing that our population is going to double in the next 20 years. I do love our focus on public health and safety, and also focusing on excellent deliverables for our community. And I am very proud of the fact that we're now into, I think Measure P was passed in 2020. We're now going into fiscal year 24-25, and we have remained true and faithful to the intent of the council at the time, which set up the oversight committee to make sure that these revenues coming in were spent almost as if it were a special tax, so that monies are dedicated for the originally intended purpose. That was important to the council at the time, and I'm happy to see that we are continuing to be faithful with that original vision. And then also, I'm very proud of the fact that we're continuing to, I think, treat our employees well in terms of benefits, and making sure that we respect the knowledge that our employees have, and attaching to that our appreciation for their hard work and the intrinsic knowledge that we would certainly not want to lose by having a rotating door and not being competitive with other municipalities or private businesses. So again, thank you for all of your hard work. It shows. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Clerk, will you take the vote?
Councilmember Gomez.
Nay.
Councilmember Irving.
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes with Councilmember Gomez voting no.
We've now taken action to approve points 3 through 6 of staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Thank you, guys. Thank you. We're going to move on to the consent calendar now, items 4 through 9. At this time, I'll invite a motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the council and the council acting on its various boards of directors take action in accordance with the recommendations set forth on the agenda items 4 through 9.
Second.
I have a first by Councilmember Jones, a second by Councilmember Irving. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote?
Councilmember Gomez.
Yes.
Councilmember Irving.
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
We've now taken actions on items 4 through 9 in accordance with the recommendations as set forth on the agenda. Written communications, item 10, benefit resolutions number 24-036 and table of organizations. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. As we just adopted the budget, we do have the financial framework in place now to effectuate the table of org, and we typically do that on an annual basis, companion to the budget, or as a part of the table of org and the benefits resolution. We're basically approving the compensation available and benefits available and employee programs available throughout the upcoming fiscal year. It also established a very important position control and basically gives me a position control to work within for the next fiscal year. And so with that, we've touched on a lot of the particulars in this already. Certainly, staff is available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council adopt benefits resolution number 24-036, revising the table of organization and compensation schedule effective July 1, 2024.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to do technical questions from council members. Councilmember Gomez?
How many employees have been notified of the yearly increase in tuition reimbursement, and how many of them are currently taking advantage of the program?
I don't have the number as to how many are actually taking advantage of the program. That's certainly something, if so desired by the council, I can circle back with you on. As far as a notification to the employees, we have shared with the employees. In fact, after the budget workshop, I communicated electronically with all of the employees about the budget, and also shared with them what's being contemplated in the budget. So we have broadcast. I've also met prior to the workshop with the employees and discussed some of our goals in the budget. So we have reached out to the employees.
Thank you. And do Park and Rec employees, both full-time and part-time, need extra approvals? And will the Parks and Rec employees benefit from the uniform inclusion paid for by the city?
What we're adopting here applies to all employees, including Park and Recreation.
And how does the promotion of a deputy city manager from range 73 to 74 affect both fringe benefits and pay scale in terms of both percentages and actual monetary pay changes?
It doesn't affect fringe benefit. The 73 to 74 is just to eliminate some compaction issue with the deputy city manager position at range 73 being too close to the director level positions. So that's all the reason for the range change.
How have changes in the ranges and titles within the summary of the table of org for fiscal year 24-25 impacted pay scales, considering adjustments for cost of living? And what significance does an increase in pay steps hold for community services?
You're going to have to restate that again, please.
So basically, I'm looking at community services and noted that there was no differential when it came to ranges. So I'm asking if there's any impact in the pay scale. Accordingly, there is not. Was there consideration of any adjustments for cost of living? I suppose there is.
So first, there's adjustments for all positions within the table of org. And the cost of living is 3% to all positions. When you say community service, I'm not sure exactly what you're speaking to, because I don't have a position that's specifically community service. So I'm not sure what you're talking about.
It's categorized under community services. So that's what my focus was, as one of the categories.
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to be more specific.
I mean, the reporting has it categorized, and it has literally the word community services. So that's all I can go by, because that's what I was given. I can't aggregate any other information.
What page are you on?
It's on a table. I'm going to do that after I finish my questioning, because I want to make sure I have time for my questions. The next question is, considering the 4.3% rise in the consumer price index, what measures should the organization take to ensure that employee compensation keeps pace with the rising cost of living, acknowledging the importance of maintaining financial stability and the welfare for all the employees?
So that's the basis for all of the work that goes into the budget. You know, we mentioned earlier the cash flows. The cash flows are done to determine our ability to afford it into the future. The cash flows are a summation of all of this detail that, in fact, we're looking at even here in the position control. And so when we look at, say, for example, a COLA of 3%, and I think you mentioned 4.3 is likely the actual for our MSA, which is the Metropolitan Service Area. You know, the reason why we don't just make it 4.3 in large part has to do with trying to make sure that where we're mitigating the cost of living, we're mitigating in the right way. And so when you look at the cost of living of 3% being applied to salaries, you also should be looking at, say, for example, the increases that we're making to fringe and healthcare benefits. So while the cost of living increase for the MSA is 4.3. I haven't done the calculation, but effectively what we're attempting to do first is be able to afford, and that's why we do the cash flows. And then secondly, make sure that we're competitive. And then third, of course, that the enhancements that we're making are enhancements in the right places.
Thank you. And that is page 688 and is titled City of Victorville Summary of Changes to the Table of Content, the Table of Organization, fiscal year
Your time is up.
425.
And so to try to answer that question, what you were speaking to wasn't a particular position. You're talking about an actual department. And in that particular page, under that particular department, there are a number of positions that include city librarian, facilities administrative technician, library associate. And I've answered that question already to say that every position in this position control, which those ones that you're identifying under the community services department, they're all they're all benefiting from the 3% cost of living allowance.
Councilmember Irving,
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Harriman,
I have none.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Metzler, in terms of our fire department, I know that some time back, we evaluated the way the department was, the way the salary schedules were set up to make sure that it was competitive with agencies outside of this one. Are we still there?
I do believe so. The MOU. So first for the fire department, there's two approaches because we have represented and non-represented employees. And so certainly as a part of the MOU, we're required as a function of the negotiation of the MOU to actually do a salary study. And I believe that's required even to do it a year in advance of the term of the MOU. And so we did that at the last MOU. We have been on an annual basis monitoring all positions, doing salary study review, and just to make sure that nothing's going askew. And so everything that we have in front of you is believed to be competitive in the marketplace.
Great. All right. Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And I just have a couple of questions. Mr. Metzler, you did touch on that the CPI is 4.3 and we're giving a 3.0 plus we're raising the college tuition fee and also the insurance. Voting on this shows that we are caring about our employees, correct? Because it, like you said, it's across the board, not just for certain divisions, certain employees.
It is, and whether or not you recognize it or not, you may remember years ago where we would recommend these enhancements to just benefit full-time employees, and we've gone so far as to extending the benefits, many of the benefits as well to part-time employees. So we've really tried to expand, and it's not just those that you mentioned. There are other things as well, such as the bereavement offerings as well, because without a program like that, especially when an employee is experiencing a difficult family situation involving loss of immediate family, the alternative is to spending annual leave, which may or may not be on the books. This is one thing that I think is valuable to employees because it's one less stress the employee has to experience and deal with while they're going through an already traumatic or difficult time in their life. So it's even more than just the 3% or the fringe benefit or even the tuition reimbursement. There's actually a lot more than that.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll invite a motion for this item.
I'd like to move to agendize immediately an adoption of a 4.3 increase for all employees in recognition of the rise in the consumer price index over the past year. This adjustment aims to ensure that the employee compensation aligns with the increased cost of living, covering essential needs such as food, shelter, transportation, energy, clothing, healthcare, and childcare.
Is there a second? That's your motion, correct?
Yes.
Is there a second on that? No second, that motion dies.
Madam Mayor, I move that we adopt staff's recommendation.
Thank you very much. I have a first by Councilmember Jones, a second by Councilmember Irving. Councilmember Jones, any comments on the pending motion?
None, thank you.
Councilmember Irving?
Gomez.
Councilmember Harriman?
None.
Councilmember Gomez?
Yes, my reason for bringing up this is I did a bit of research in the Consumer Price Index, and I have seen that the price in food, shelter, transportation, energy, clothing, healthcare, and childcare have gone up and increased. And those employees who have many of those, if not 100% of those, should have and would have benefit at this moment. But nonetheless, my try was best, but I'll still be voting for the 3% increase.
I have nothing. Madam Clerk, will you kindly take the vote?
Councilmember Gomez.
Aye.
Councilmember Irving.
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman.
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. And we've now taken action to approve staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item 11, calling for the general municipal election and consolidating with statewide election with the San Bernardino County Register of Voters. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. We do have an election coming, and code does require that we actually call for the election and also make a determination as to whether or not we want to actually host the election ourselves, or as we have for many years, along with, I believe, every other city in this county, rely on the San Bernardino County Registrar of Voters Office. There's a formal action that has to take place to delegate the coordinating and the holding of the election by the San Bernardino County Registrar of Voters Office. And so with that, this would, I think, be basically the beginning of election season, if you will. And so with that, the item also includes a forecast of cost as to what it's going to cost us to actually contribute to our share and cost of the election for the upcoming Victorville City Council election in November. And so with that, the author on this item is your city clerk, Ms. Jennifer Thompson. She or I are available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please read the recommendation?
That your honorable city council adopt resolution number 24-044 for the holding of a general municipal election, and adopt resolution number 24-045 for the consolidation of the general municipal election.
Thank you. This time we're going to do technical questions from council members. Councilmember Irving?
I don't have any. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Harriman?
So I understand this right. So we're budgeting the money and we're just giving it to the county because they'll do it less expensive than it would cost us.
Well, certainly, we believe that they can do it more cost effectively than we can, but we're not, with the budgeting of the monies, we're not just turning that over to them. There is a process, and effectively, the county registrar of voters office fronts all the costs and then reconciles after the election, once the election is over, and that's when they tabulate all the costs associated with the cost of managing the election, including the mailing of all ballots and things of that nature. Once the costs are reconciled, then they divide it up to the participating jurisdictions.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gomez?
How is the budgeted amount of $105,000 for election expenses for fiscal year 24-25 calculated, particularly in anticipation of the upcoming presidential election, considering past election costs, including the first district-based election in 2022 and other historical election expenditures?
So thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Certainly, the item that's in the fiscal impact is identified. It is based on an estimate. We have looked at past expenses. I think it's easy to draw a conclusion that if in the last presidential election, which was 2020, the costs were almost $140,000, I think an appropriate question would be, why wouldn't we be budgeting the same. However, our election this year is going to be different in the sense that we will actually be doing a district election. And so we actually have 3 districts up for election in November. And so one of the fundamental difference between this election and 2020 is the fact that those that receive ballots in the city of Victorville won't be the entire city, won't be the registered voters in the entire city of Victorville. It's going to be the registered voters in those 3 specific districts. So based upon our logic, it doesn't seem most appropriate to budget the same cost in 2020, believing that there's going to be less registered voters in Victorville actually getting ballots.
And how is the city clerk processing interested candidates who wish to run for upcoming November 5th, 24?
Councilmember Gomez, that has nothing to do with what we're voting on here.
I believe so, but I'll move on.
Okay.
Is it customary for the districts up for election in the general municipal elections, especially those seeking consolidations with the statewide elections, to consult with the San Bernardino County Register of Voters during the inquiries of the city's election?
No, I wouldn't say statewide. I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but statewide, no. The only communications with San Bernardino County likely should be for participating jurisdictions within San Bernardino County.
Thank you. No further questions.
Councilmember Jones?
Yeah, just a quick question, Madam Mayor. So $105,000 being budgeted for 3 districts, and in 2022 was a little over 10,000 for 2 districts. And I know that it's a non-presidential versus presidential, but the same information goes to the voters, with the exception of, the increase for another district. Why such a difference from 10,000 to 100,000, distinct from the extra district?
So and the city clerk can correct me if I'm completely off base. Obviously, voter turnout is going to factor into that. And so as I articulated, one of the expenses is going to be the actual mailing. There's going to be another expense associated with the actual response. And so the reconciliation is likely including the difference in response. And so if you've got a low voter turnout year, then it's likely going to be lower in terms of the cost to actually process the response.
Got it. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. At this time, I'll invite a motion for this item.
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt points 1 and 2 adopt staff's recommendations.
Okay.
For 1 and 2 for points 1 and 2 for item 11.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. I have a first by Councilmember Irving, a second by Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Irving, any comments?
No.
Councilmember Jones, any comments?
Thank you.
Councilmember Harriman? Councilmember Gomez?
No.
And I have none. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote?
Councilmember Gomez,
Aye.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman, Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
We've now taken action to approve staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item number 12, budget amendment for fiscal year 2022 Emergency Management Performance Grant. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This item is a pretty simple item in that it's just repurposing a scope associated with a grant that the fire department received, repurposing a grant so that the grant can actually be used to purchase 6 SCBA air packs, 10 SCBA masks, along with 15 SCBA cylinders. So with that, the author on this item is your Fire Chief, Bobby Klimmer. He or I are available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council adopt Resolution Number 24-046, amending the fiscal year 2023-24 budget for the revenue and expenditures of the 2022 Emergency Management Performance Grant Program in the total amount of $25,744.
Thank you. This time we're going to do technical questions from Councilmember Irving.
I don't have any questions. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Gomez.
None. Thank you.
Councilmember Harriman.
I have none.
Councilmember Jones,
And thank you.
and I have done. I'll invite a motion for this item.
I move to approve staff recommendation. I move to adopt staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a first by Councilmember Harriman, a second by Councilmember Irving. Councilmember Harriman, any comments?
I have none.
Councilmember Irving,
No comments, thank you.
Councilmember Jones,
And thank you.
Councilmember Gomez.
No, thank you.
I have none. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote?
Councilmember Gomez,
Aye.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
We've now taken action to approve staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item number 13, amendment number 1 to the Consult Professional Services Provider Agreement with Four Leaf Inc. for building and fire inspections and plans review services. Project ESC 24-014. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and members of the council. Four Leaf is a professional service provider that we've relied upon for some time, both in the building department and in the fire department as it relates to fire inspection and plan check services. And while we, at the mid-year budget, made the appropriations necessary to satisfy the work associated with Four Leaf, this item is being brought forth effectively to match the contract with the actual appropriation of funds. And so with that, in large part, this item is brought forward not only at mid-year, but in contract form now because of some vacancies that have existed in that division, the prevention side of the house. And so with that, we've relied on Four Leaf professional services to supplement the workload so that we can maintain our service response levels on the plan check and inspection side. And so with that, certainly we've got co-authors of your building official, Mr. Joe Sleggers, and we also have Fire Chief Bobby Clemmer, and we're available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That the city council approve amendment number 1 to the consultant professional services provider agreement with Four Leaf Inc., increasing the total compensation amount for the fire portion by $73,248 for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Thank you. This time we're going to do technical questions from Councilmember Gomez,
None, thank you.
Councilmember Irving,
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Harriman,
None.
Councilmember Jones,
And thank you.
and I have none. At this time, I'll invite a motion for this item.
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt staff's recommendations.
I'll second. We have a first by Councilmember Irving, a second by Mayor Becerra. Councilmember Irving, any comments?
No comments.
I have none. Councilmember Jones,
And thank you.
Councilmember Harriman,
I have none.
Councilmember Gomez.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote?
Councilmember Gomez,
Aye.
Councilmember Irving, Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
We've now taken action to approve staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item number 14, approve the purchase of an Elgin CNG room bear street sweeper. I'm out of practice. Mr. Metzler, would you kindly introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This item is effectively to purchase another sweeper unit. And currently, we're expecting our 6th unit to arrive. This, once it's actually constructed and delivered, which delivery will take about a year from your approval tonight, that'll bring us to a 7th unit. Our typical operation on the street sweeping side is we typically have one unit more than the actual number of staff members, largely so that we can have an sweeper vehicle available in case one is down for service. We currently have 4 sweeper operators. The budget that you just approved contemplates adding a 5th to be able to increase our sweeping response in this current fiscal year. Ultimately, when this 7th unit is delivered, we intend to budget for an additional position on the sweeper side, ultimately fulfilling one of the goals that was discussed with this council maybe 2 or 3 years ago when street sweeping was a concern. And so we've been working towards that. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to work towards that quicker, in large part because of how long it takes to actually spec and buy a unit. But we're moving closer, and this actual approval tonight will allow us to proceed with the purchase of the 7th unit. And so with that, this does involve a piggyback purchase where we're relying on cooperative purchasing authority to actually satisfy the competitiveness. And so with that, this item was authored by your Director of Public Works and Water, Mr. Doug Matthews, and he's available for any questions or comments you might have.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please read the recommendation?
That the Honorable City Council award Hacker Equipment Company as the authorized distributor the piggyback purchase of an Elgin C&G Broom Bear Sweeper for an amount not to exceed $571,901.03 under the Sourcewell contract number 093021-ELG.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to do technical questions from council members. Councilmember Harriman?
I know what piggyback is, but Keith, can you just refresh everybody's memory? Because I guess that could be kind of confusing to others.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. So piggyback is effectively relying on some other entity's actual bidding process for a similar spec. And so in this particular case, I believe it's Sourcewell that we've relied on. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Yes, it looks like we did rely on Sourcewell, but effectively we're relying on an independent agency that does public bidding on public agencies' behalf. And so it's a more efficient, effective way of pooling the purchasing of these types of items. Alternatively, not relying on an independent that does the mass procurement of these types of items. We would effectively burden an already burdened staff with having to take on an additional workload. So it does actually frees up time, and it's an efficient use of resource to rely on another public agency's bidding process.
And the Elgin has more buying power, and so we get a better price for the equipment.
Elgin is actually the type of sweeper, but it would be Sourcewell that because they're doing the purchasing, doing the solicitation, the procurement on behalf of other public agencies. They do have the purchase. They're the ones that actually get the purchasing power on our behalf.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Councilmember Jones?
I don't have any questions. I will have comments. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Irving?
Yes, I'm actually glad this item is on the agenda. I do have a question though. So once the sweeper arrives, is it our vision that we'll sweep residential streets on a 4 to 6 week interval, or is that how frequently we sweep at this time?
The vision I'm sorry, that is the frequency that we're sweeping at this time. And so the vision that we have, and certainly is the vision that we shared, is to increase the frequency to be shorter than that.
To weekly?
Weekly may require more sweepers and operators, but perhaps Mr. Matthews can share what the vision is once we get the 6th unit staffed and operating.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello.
Good evening.
Hi.
Is this on? So this unit, what it's going to allow us to do is, obviously with 4 operators, you have operators that take vacations and certain things of that nature, are out sick, extended leaves. You lose a sweeper operator, so you can't really get that consistency of 4 operators. With a 5th operator now in the fold, now when we have one of the others out, we have somebody who can step in and run that machine, so we can get a consistency and see what 4 operators full-time can do in the residential areas. So the 5th operator could do commercial streets, could do special requests and things like that. It just gives us that flexibility. Once we see what that looks like with 4 dedicated operators, then we know what it could look like with a 5th dedicated operator and still a spare person out there to sweep. So the goal is hopefully monthly, but there's a cost to it as always. And then there's a code enforcement cost as well. But the goal for sure is to go look at it, see what we can do, present the council with the cost that it would take to do it effectively and efficiently. So we're working to get there.
This is a question that folks ask all the time, me all the time. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gomez.
No, thank you.
Thank you. And I have none. I'll invite a motion for this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that we adopt staff's recommendation.
Second.
But first by Councilmember Jones, second by Councilmember Irving. Councilmember Jones, comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I am, as you can imagine, Mr. Metzler, very happy to see, to see this item. We had some discussions several years ago, and for me, it wasn't so much that there was concern from community members that we weren't doing a good job. It was how often, and then there was a lot of talk about, of course, having like a code enforcement car following street sweepers to deal with issues of chronically non-registered cars and et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like we're moving closer to that. And with that, I'm gonna say thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Irving?
No, I've already expressed my sense.
Thank you. Councilmember Gomez?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Harriman?
Yeah, I hope this keeps going so we can get all these unlicensed and cars off the street that is actually putting a burden on getting our streets swept. I recently, this is just a vision of mine, of the street sweepers having license plate readers. And when they pull up and see a car and they know if it's registered or if it's stolen or whatever, and have an officer then respond. So I have a vision.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, will you take the roll?
Councilmember Gomez,
Aye.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
We've now taken action to approve staff's recommendation as presented on the agenda. Item number 15, City Manager Reports. Mr. Metzler, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Animal control, animal care and controls back at it again. We have a couple of events where we're going to provide more opportunities to adopt that furry friend that you're looking for. So first, we're going to be at the High Desert Farmers Market on Thursday, June 6th, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 12 p.m. That event's actually at the VVC campus. And then if you can't make that, we're going to get you somehow, and we'll probably get you at Costco on Saturday, June 8th, between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And those are our adoption events. Community services registration for the kids' summer camp is now open. Kids ages 6 through 12 can enjoy sports activities and swimming at Doris Davies Park. Weekdays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We've got information on our city website to enroll along with further information. On the engineering side of the house, work on Bear Valley Road, on the Bear Valley Road reconstruction project between 395 and Amethyst Road. That's ongoing. The contractor's now halfway through phase 2 out of a 3-phased project. So contractor's on schedule to base pave the north side of the road in coming weeks. With work anticipated to be completed, we're still on track for July to be completed. Planning side, the Wellness Center recently received another accolade, or accolades. The Inland Empire section of the California American Planning Association recognized Victorville with an award of excellence in opportunity empowerment. The Wellness Center also won 2 top platinum honors from the International Architecture and Design Awards in 2 categories: the prefabricated structure and sports, recreation, and wellness facilities category. And then finally, Architizers A+ Architecture Awards honored the campus with a special mention for the For Good category. And so with that, those are all that I have. I've also got a project list report that I'll follow up to you via email so you can see what development activities taking place in the city. That's all I have at this time, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Item number 16, discussion and possible action regarding upcoming agenda items from our council members. We're going to start with Councilmember Gomez.
None at the moment, thank you.
Councilmember Irving?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Harriman?
I'd like to visit the feasibility of another community swimming pool on the south side of the city where we've a larger portion of the population is starting to develop. And I think the swimming pool at Doris Davies.
Hold on. Do we have enough to go off there before we start a discussion, or is that enough?
Ye-
Go ahead, Andre.
Would that be a motion to
That's,
consider the feasibility or do you want to just direct staff to look into that and then come back? And
I want to direct staff to look into it.
For that, we need consensus.
Okay, I move to visit the feasibility of adding a community swimming pool.
I'll second that. Okay, you said south side, right?
Yes,
Do you have a time frame for that for staff?
they can take as long as they want.
Nah, summer's coming up. How about 2 meetings?
2 meetings.
I'll second that one. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Gomez,
Aye.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Anything else?
I have nothing else.
Councilmember Jones?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. I do have one. I would like to have an item on the next agenda for discussion and possible action regarding Assembly Bill 3259 as it relates to transaction and use tax and its ability to allow Victorville to increase the cap on transaction and use tax that is statutory available to us.
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you.
You would like me to take the vote?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Gomez,
I have clarification. Is there a timeline that she wants this? Because there's no timeline.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Next meeting.
Aye.
Councilmember Irving,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Harriman,
Yes.
Mayor Becerra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. That's all I have. Item number 17, reports from Councilmember Irving.
I don't have anything to report.
Thank you. Councilmember Harriman.
Yeah, last weekend I was asked to visit a Boy Scout troop and the subject was community service. And the kids already participate in the city cleanup we normally do, but they were all interested in what they could do for the community. And I took some literature that the city clerk gave me there, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Gomez.
Mine is typically the same. I vary it in terms of how I make a discussion out of it. It's where I go out into the community in my everyday performances, whether I'm a liquor store or a grocery store, an entertainment facility, or in another city hall, or even in another county or in another state. The same rendition is how can I be a resource to the community members to help them effectuate what their needs are that they are going through at that moment. It doesn't matter what it is, there's always an answer and there's always an outreach. And that has been my forte since the very beginning. And it only gets more elaborate as I begin to gain more knowledge and more experience as I sit here and go out into the community and they feed me whatever it is that they have troubles with. So it doesn't change.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones.
No reports. Thank you.
It was a slow week for me, but I did last weekend, did the ribbon cutting at the fairgrounds. I'd like to thank the San Bernardino County Fairgrounds for another fair well put in our city. I heard good remarks on it, what I went to go see Sunday for the 15 minutes that I lasted there. It was a good fair. I had to come home. So thank you very much. And
Member Irving.
yeah, thank you. Councilmember Irving, I thought I did ask her, but.
You did, and I said I have nothing to report.
Sorry.
Okay,
Clerk wants to hear from you.
love me, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Did I remember everybody else? Okay, good to go. It's time to adjourn this meeting at 8:18. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for coming.